right. Awesome.
Well, good morning, everyone. And I'd like to welcome you all to the Tuesday, May 21st, 2019 Finger Lakes REMAC meeting. Thank you all for coming in on a unusually nice Finger Lakes day. Just by the time the meeting's over, it may be raining.
We can only hope.
We can only hope.
I'm
So,
just kidding. Jeez. I just bored a hole in my soul.
well, you know, we want to elevate the water level in the lake. It already is. I apologize. All right. Approval of the minutes from March 19th. I would entertain a motion from someone. All right, motion second. Anyone against? Any corrections, changes? Should have asked that first. I apologize. Don't hold me on Sturgis. All right, standing reports. Program Agency Coordinator.
So we have received an application we reported to the Fire Site Committee from Richmond Fire Department. They gave me a packet with a list of the providers, and we'll be sending that off. There we have a letter of support from their medical director, and so we'll be moving that on to the committee for review and consideration. Attended the U.S. Church Conference in Charlotte, North Carolina. That was very informative, and we working to start collecting some more data than we do currently as a result. State meetings were uneventful. Budget processing stuff with the states, and it's about it. Pretty status quo. Dr. Davidoff and I actually are right at the end point for the medical director credentialing, so that should be just about ready. Me and the program pretty well set with just a couple pieces of it.
Very good. Thank you, sir. FLC Administrator, Program Director.
We finished spring classes. They tested last Thursday. We sent about a dozen paramedics to the on-site testing, and we only had one that went down. We had 8 that stayed back to test here. We don't have their test results back here. We run about 3 weeks, and then all the other classes tested as well here. And the junior class now is the senior class with the 21 and 22 in it. So our next paramedic session won't start until January. We're working on summer classes, offerings, and then we're starting training and starting to work on fall classes. That type of thing. So we are off and moving. I do have some information on some additional classes that we're doing. We are doing this afternoon. We put out for EMS week. Stop the Bleed, Train the Trainer. There are 2 sessions here. AMR out of Syracuse is coming to do these. One is from 3 to 5, and the other is from 7 to 9. And we have approximately 20 people signed up for the session, which is, for us, a good show, I think.
I just want to comment. AMR was at the regional EMS conference doing the Stop the Bleed, and they did a phenomenal job. So please get the word out there. This is really well worth attending.
They have additional capacity to either of those?
Yeah.
The nice thing about Stop the Bleed is
There's not really a limit, is there?
No,
There's
I mean,
kind of as many people you can pack in the room.
pretty much, yeah. And obviously, the more people we train, the more trained the trainers we get. But these guys, I've been to a bunch of these. These guys did an extraordinary job, so it's well worth attending.
And the program agency has recently purchased 2 training kits, so we have the ability. Each kit has the ability to have 10 students participate in that. So.
The only caveat to that for a limit would be so that we know how many trainers they need to bring with them as far as personnel. So that's really cut off the good of these.
And admittedly, it's tough to always get folks things on short notice, but you can put the word out.
It's a mess. So the other thing we have going on, and I know Mercy Flag will probably touch on this, they have their EMS Education Day on Friday, May 31st. I understand from online it is full.
It is.
So somebody asked me, and I said to call Aaron or ask if there's a waiting list.
Yeah, I've got a message out to our coordinator of it to see if there's a waiting list. But I know he had some already waiting, but I'll get something back.
Well, I gave them your contact.
Yep, absolutely.
So then, Mercy Flight, I'm probably stealing your thunder here. Mercy
go
Flight
for it.
also has a pre-hospital management of seizures on June 19th at their Brickyard quarters. We are doing preceptor workshop here for new folks that want to become preceptors for our classes in June. Thompson Hospital, or Thompson, whatever you want to call it, Thompson Health. This Thursday is doing from 5 to 6. The mobile stroke unit is going to be their presentation. 6 to 7, they are doing where, what, and why of acute ischemic stroke. And 7 to 8, they are doing hazmat technical decon. And that is at the Wegmans Nutritional Services Center at Thompson. And last but not least, all of us know that in January of 19, the Commissioner of Health signed into effect that 17-year-olds could become EMTs, where in the past it has been 18. So there are a lot of questions that have come to the top of the boiling water over. So executive asked that we reach out. I have made an appointment or scheduled a time for Tuesday, June 25th at 6:30 here at night. Brad Pinsky will be coming to do a presentation on some of the issues, some of the things we need to think about. If anybody has any questions, if you would get them to me, he said it's better to come with some questions for the docket than to walk in and say, who's got questions, and nobody say anything. I mean, we came from executive. We have to look at something from the sponsorship. If these children are 17, legally we cannot have them sign a contract that they are responsible for the tuition and their textbooks. So he's helping us develop a form for that. And there are some other issues for the sponsorship for us as well, about doing their clinical time. My questions about how late can they be on an ambulance for ride time? Different things like that. Obviously, I don't want them riding with someone if they're doing an interfacility transfer and it's going across state lines. I don't really think our medic should be taking a minor across state lines in case something happens. Not that I think it never does, but you never know. So some of the other ones were from the agencies, insurance, how does it play into it? Are there labor laws that have to come into effect that we have to take care of? And anything else. And Jason Gordle has graciously going to help me with that. So
What was the date?
it is June 25th, 6:30 at night. Flyers are going out today. I sent one to Ross. He is actually at the memorial today in Albany, and he said that Brad is already working with the new assistant director at the state about some of these questions. So,
I'm sure New York State's got it all covered.
well, their answer when it was asked at the state was the commissioner put out the policy. The problems are the agency's problems.
New York State's always got it covered.
So, and then the last thing I want to put out, and some of you may very well have remembered her, many of you probably do not because you're that new. One of our past instructors, Carol Favreau, passed away in April. She was with us actually from the very beginning of EMS when the council was started, and had been an instructor with us for many years. So I went to the service, and that's it for me.
Thanks, Don. So Don and I sat in on Mission Lifeline with a few others in the room, and I got to tell you, this was an amazing meeting. I really give them kudos. They had a good attendance from nearly every hospital in the region, and the comments was, how do we take care of our patients better? Our patients, not my patients, this service, it was truly a group that was cooperating to try and make STEMI care better. It was rather impressive. I came away thinking, you know what, we're doing a pretty decent job in the Finger Lakes. There's room for improvement, and I think there always will be, but for the most part, we're getting people in and out fairly quickly, or getting where they need to go. Everyone's chipping in to do that, and I think if we just keep plugging away at it, I think we're doing pretty well. So that was really an enjoyable meeting. CMAC was extremely enjoyable. It only lasted about half an hour. And now that we don't have individual service and regional protocols, there's really not a whole lot to talk about at medical standards in CMAC. It goes by pretty quickly. There were a few things that were approved. The New York City Rescue Task Force had a few changes in their protocols regarding warm zone triage, pretty much passed pretty quickly. With the ET3, the transportation destination changes that are coming up, there was some word changes made. So change destination from hospital to facility, just simple things like that. There really was not a lot that came up there. The state looked towards people to suggest metrics to look at over the next year, and they came up with a list of 7 metrics. Percentages of stroke that are brought to the stroke center directly, if glucoses are checked pre-hospital, percent of patients intubated with end-tidal CO2, percent of opiate ODs who refuse transport, arrest with ROSC, chest pain with EKGs, percent of trauma patients that follow protocol destination. So they're going to be looking at some of those data points, and they're going to try to get back to us. Now that John's been out to EMS charts, we're going to look maybe at doing some of that ourselves, since EMS charts is pretty widely used and really provides a lot of data if we know where to look for it. So we may try to get some of that data back to the group on our own. Let's see, stop the bleed. So what was interesting was that hemostatic gauze, I didn't realize, is considered a medical device. It can only be applied by a licensed professional. So school nurses were not allowed to use hemostatic gauze in schools without a prescription for individual students. Couldn't write a blanket prescription. So they've written a letter to the commissioner to try and change that so that school nurses will be allowed to use hemostatic gauze. That was really pretty much the gist of what happened at state. There's one New York State investigation that probably doesn't affect us, but as a result of an investigation conducted by the Department of Health, the New York State certification has been revoked effective April 2nd of this year for violations of Part 800.16, which they do not specify what that is. But a individual by the name of Jose Rivera, who lives in Bronx, New York, had his EMT revoked. So if any of you are looking at hiring Jose, please explain to him that you cannot do so. Stop the bleed. It continues to be a hot topic, and rightly so. So please attend the classes. If you are a trainer, train as many people as possible. And please, guys, carry hemostatic gauze and tourniquets on your rigs and helicopters. Thank you. I don't have much more, so I'm going to pass it along to the RSA team.
So we had a meeting in April. It was very productive. I thank everybody for coming, especially Dr. Surratt, who's out of town, graciously donating his time to attend. So we covered a lot of ground, and I'm going to just gloss over some of the highlights of it. The first highlight of it is that we have created a spreadsheet of all the RSI providers currently in the region. Also a spreadsheet of the current RSI students. I'll get to that in a minute. What we talked about was creating a form every year that the agency medical director, a lot of the onus for this committee is going to be on the agency medical directors and the agency committee members themselves to kind of take a lot of the burden away from you and Dr. Surratt and the other doctors. So one of the things we're going to do is we're going to have a form that every year the agency medical director will sign that not only attests that the providers met all the criteria, which I'll explain, but also does not hold the region liable for consequences if there's any fail. I'll have that form probably by the next meeting. The other thing that we did is we discussed, well, how do we remain credentialed? And usually in the past, if you may remember, we decided to base it on total number of ALS patient contacts. And the committee found that probably wasn't very a good gauge of how to be an RSI provider, because anybody can do 125 patient contacts a year. So it's going to be based on live patient intubations and also actual performance of the RSI procedure itself. Also, we're going to have some CME requirements. And something that we did not have was a remediation program for credentialing. So we've developed a program where if you're not compliant for 1 year, 2 years, and then the third year is, if you're not compliant for 3 years, meaning you haven't done an RSI or an intubation in 3 years, then there's really no reason for you to be an RSI provider and to be mandatory notification. We talked about training. Again, the onus is going to be away from the committee. and on the individual medical directors. It's going to be their responsibility to say what is considered good for RSI training and what is considered a total number of hours that would be beneficial. We recommended 6 hours per year in advanced airway topics, and also cadaver lab, which is strongly recommended. However, due to costs and opportunities, it's not mandated, but it is strongly recommended. The next topic we talked about was quality assurance. There's always been a kind of a stigma about, I don't want this agency to see my charts and stuff. One of the things that we used to do back in when this first committee first started was have some sort of roundtable discussion. If an agency had an RSI, we brought it to the committee and we discussed it in a roundtable to not only to talk about any concerns but also to pitch ideas. We're going to evaluate that. We're going to redo that again. So when we have the RSI committee meetings, the first part of the meeting is going to be the meeting, and then the second part is going to be the roundtable discussion. So that if there is a significant QA issue, it'll be the RSI committee that brings it up to the regional QA committee after the individual agency brings it to us. And we think that's better, and it will be, so there'll be no questions of, well, did you do this and was this discussed? So that when we present this to the committee, it'll be streamlined a lot better. The 2019 RSI class we talked about, we set a tentative date for the end of the third quarter, beginning of the fourth quarter of 2019. And again, the roles and responsibilities of this class are going to be 95% the agencies involved, members of the committee, and also any senior RSI providers. We decided to have the same setup as before, but adding something that we thought was beneficial, and that's oral boards in lieu of pre-testing. We had decided to have a send out a pre-test for 20 questions. We decided that's probably not feasible, and we're going to do an oral board portion of the final examination. So there'll be 3 parts of the final examination. An oral board, and it can either be in oral scenarios or it can be an interview-based discussion. And then it will be practice scenarios and testing. The final part, and I'm sorry to ramble on here, is that we talked about committee responsibilities. Just like the advanced practice committee is mandatory for attendings by ALS agencies, the RSI meetings should be mandatory for RSI agencies. And non-participation in these meetings can and will jeopardize status of the RSI agencies. And the other question was who attends it. It should be the ALS chief or agency chief, and if they're not available, the senior RSI provider in the agency. The meetings will now be quarterly, and the next meeting will be in July. I'm hosting it again. We made a list. So currently right now, if I have everybody, there's 34 credentialed RSI providers currently practicing in the region. There is a potential to have 55 RSI providers in the region, provided that everyone who has signed up for the test passes successfully. Further classes will be discussed on a need versus desire basis. If we identify there's 55 RSI providers, do we need more? When we identify people that have not practiced, we may need more. So that's going to be a work in progress. So we may not have a class in 2020. It's going to be all based on need versus on the need of the region. So that's all I have for that.
Guys, as always, great work. Any discussion, questions?
You are looking at reviewing PCRs?
Yes.
Okay.
Either reviewing or having a roundtable discussion. I know what you're going to say, if we black out the patient care information, it's just like quality assurance, it should not be an issue, unless I'm wrong.
Well, I was going to say, other than that, then your meetings would be here so that when you're done with them, we can shred them. If you're going to be making copies.
Yeah, we have shredders at our bases, and that fine as well. I mean,
how we did the roundtable discussions before was the provider that did the RSI actually brought their own chart.
Yeah.
Did that, presented it, and I think they brought it back to their own agency for just focus on it. So we did this
Preferably if there is a print copy, it's with
Yes.
the redacted demographics.
Yep, that's what we do. I don't anticipate a numerous number of charts being reviewed. It's just having some sort of roundtable discussion. Also, what also will be discussed, but may not be presented in a paper form, is RSI requests or RSI procedures that weren't done. That's more of a roundtable discussion. And I don't believe we will actually have to have that chart there. It'd be more of a why did you do this? What was your thought process? But the actual RSI chart itself, that for an actual RSI procedure that was done, will be there. But again, as Matt said, it will be redacted, and then the individual provider most likely will be presenting it.
We haven't had a QA issue come up to QA committee in almost 6 months, and that's even with my search in social media every single day. So either you guys are getting a lot better at hiding it, or somehow you're practicing better. I think you're just hiding it better, but I'll find you. Ken, you have a
They've
question or
unfriended
comment?
you, Jack.
I think they answered my question was, is the individual provider going to be required to attend the?
It was the committee, yes, I don't know if I apologize if I didn't say that, but yes, that's probably what will be the course. I think it's better than me, like if someone in my agency did an RSI, I think it would be much more beneficial that that provider spoke about it than I spoke about it, because I wasn't there.
So they can get the story of what
Yeah.
It worked really nice when we did it before. It was a very friendly atmosphere, nice educated atmosphere. It was nice.
We just got away from it, and we need to revisit that.
I like the concept, and I think as good as we're doing, there's always room for improvement. Absolutely.
Are all RSI procedures going to be reviewed, or only those that there's some sort of a question about?
As I said, all our sites will be discussed.
We are not doing that. I mean, do you have, by any chance, you have numbers?
Numbers from my agency. I believe, just off the top of my head, I believe there was maybe 20 last year in the division. I believe that might be low. I know that my agency did 9. I did 6 of them, but I believe it might be low. It could be higher. But I know we discussed it briefly at our meeting.
And then we're talking ground there, because obviously we get into the air, the numbers are a lot higher.
Correct. This
But
is ground only.
I mean, the number of advanced airway procedures is way down with the upgrade and training, which is what we were hoping for, and I think that's been, again, a huge success.
Yes.
So, what's that?
CPAP's made a big difference.
CPAP's made a difference, and just the additional training, knowing when to go to CPAP instead of jumping into an RSI situation. We've had, I think we had 1, maybe 2 surgical airways throughout the year. I mean, just big improvement. So, again, good job, guys. Thank you.
One other quick question. Is this strictly going to be for field RSIs, or are you also going to be looking at interfacility transports of critical patients who may already be RSI?
That's a good question. We were just focusing solely on field, but if you feel that in a facility would be beneficial, we could address that in July.
Just ask.
I was going to say field, because there's a propensity if it's in your facility that the provider may not be doing the procedure, just
Right.
maybe monitoring.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be more beneficial to just focus solely on field RSIs. If there's some sort of question or need of education about monitoring and or post-intubation sedation, maybe we can revisit that, but I think for this committee's purpose, just field RSIs would be beneficial.
Would you consider an unplanned intubation mid-transport a field RSI?
Anything that a provider does would be yes.
Okay.
This REMAC currently doesn't really have the right to look at interfacility transports.
Oh, okay.
Because we don't have protocols covering interfacility transports. And that's something that the Advanced Practice Committee is looking into working on, which would be having regional protocols for interfacilities and SCT type
There was
transports.
preliminary discussion in CMAC as well about diving down into critical care transport.
Right. So it's kind of hard to review and tell someone they've done something wrong when they don't have protocols that they're following, per se. So when the Advanced Practice Committee, which is the next committee to report, do we have anyone from Advanced Practice?
Yeah, I guess.
Change your hat real fast.
Yeah, so,
Well, can I ask, well,
But-
Are you gonna put that all into a form and send to us in the office, so when somebody calls and asks how's the RSI work, John and I have something other than just,
What do you mean? But
well, you have a whole plan
You
there.
want the meeting minutes? I can send it to you. That's no problem.
Okay.
I also have the database if you want that as well.
That'd be nice.
Yeah.
Or do you just want his plan, like his protocol of what they're going to do?
Well, because people will call and they want to ask questions to the RSI, it's like, I can't address them because I don't know what went on in the meeting.
We also have to be able to report that back to the state as far as the
Yeah, I'll send the minutes to you as soon as I get back. Or if I don't, John, just remind me tomorrow.
But there was no coffee provided at the meeting, so
No,
you're okay.
I'm cheap. We're cheap. So advanced practice committee. Unfortunately, don't have a lot to report because there was no meeting in May. There was a little bit of a mix-up. Apparently, not many people were told about a CME that happened for the mobile stroke unit. So some of us showed up for the meeting, some people showed up for the CME, and so it was I believe 6 people. I have the sheet. 6 people attended the CME. I did not. I'm already trained on the stroke unit. And I was not at the March meeting because I was on vacation. However, I know that they talked about the SCT protocols. I believe since there is not a May meeting, and I know that Dr. Davidoff is stressing the SCT protocols, and also there was other questions which will be done tomorrow about hazmat, toxmedic, hazmat protocols. I believe there may be a need for a July meeting. So I'll have to address that with Chairman Hay, but probably we will need a July meeting to discuss the SCT and other protocols.
I would appreciate that. Thank you. Any further? You're good.
I'm good, that's all I
All
have.
right, well, thank you very much for bringing both those reports forward. Moving into our agencies, Mercy Flight Central.
As Donna mentioned, we have a couple education opportunities. We do have a wait list. I'm just going to answer back on that. You can email myself. You can email Matt Yelton, which is myelton@mercyflightcentral.org, or our Mercy Flight Facebook page can send a message through that. Also we'll be sharing this electronically, but our public notice for our Keynes site survey, we're going for accreditation, and they will be at our base on the 12th and 13th, so we have to give public notice for that. We'll send it out as well. And the other education, June 19th.
Oh, yeah, the other one,
Yeah.
especially if you don't get into, if you have people that wanted to go, that didn't get into the one on the 31st, June 19th, that's with Dr. Chris Samet. That's pre-hospital management of seizures. It's at 6 p.m. at the hangar. And you can register that the same way, Facebook or the website.
And you guys have one
That's it.
Yeah, that's October, I want to say maybe the 2nd. I can tell you in just a second. The 4th, Friday the 4th of October, and it's in Vernon Downs, so if anybody wants to make the trip out there, that'll be happening October 4th. Yep, similar thing to what we do at Finger Lakes at day long, CM the event for last year.
Thank you, folks. LifeNet Guthrie, welcome back.
Nothing new.
All right, well, thank you. Anyone from AMR? Medic 55.
Only one thing to mention, the Gates County still without an EMS coordinator. So the county emergency management office just asked me to mention that they're currently in the process of renewing their course sponsorship to teach EMT and CFR classes. And they're sort of behind the 8 ball, and they're currently working through the paperwork. And they hope to have some classes scheduled this fall. They can get through it. That's all the money mentioned.
Finger Lakes Inn?
So we are progressing with the idea of piloting inexpensive method for delivering nitrous oxide. We're working with Airgas's parent company out of France, and we are hoping to enter into a FDA-approved demonstration project next month.
So when people ask for opiates, we just say no. Okay, excellent. Any other agencies that would like to come forth with anything? Any other committees that we did not mention? All right. Old business was physician credentialing, was John touched on, but Nate and I spent time reviewing the PowerPoint and pretty much got it done. Questions are written. They're tough, boy. If you guys pass, I'm going to be real surprised. No. If anyone fails, I'll be real surprised. The idea was to make sure you kind of had a sense of what the protocols are, and I think everyone hopefully will pass. We're waiting for a list from FF Thompson of the docs that need to be credentialed. I think we've got pretty much everyone else, and
Thompson and Warwick.
I don't recall getting a formal request, but.
I was going to say, I haven't put anything together for you either, so.
So the thing is we were waiting. We were waiting for a list of who was credentialed in either county because we decided last meeting that people in Monroe were going to.
a lot of people are, yes.
So I need
If
to
you
know.
could provide me those names, I can tell you. So I
I have a very long list because I'm covering all of our GH docs that come out to Newark, so.
Well, I got a 4-page list from U of R of all the credentialed docs.
Okay.
So, yeah,
You prefer us to send,
just
I mean, I've got a list of about 25 docs, 30
let me
docs.
see if I can
It's a
pull
long
it off
list.
and send it to you.
Yeah, that may be easier.
Check on your email. I'll send it to you.
So we should be able to have that up, hopefully, maybe by next month, even, depending on Monroe Livingston's web. Any new business to come
Yes.
forth?
So I got a letter from Middlesex Hope Company, just announcing that Dr. Scott Glick is now assuming their medical director responsibilities for their PAD program. Sodastown Ambulance Corps is providing notice that they intend to carry the check and kids to the ambulance first. They said they provide Melrems and
I didn't think Melrose was doing that anymore.
They're not.
Yeah, what's the date on that letter?
Melrems date was October 21st.
That's pretty up to date. Yeah, I don't, best of my knowledge, and Mike, you would know best because you work there, that system had some issues. Melrose got out of it. Boundtree kind of has the kits now, and I think they should have the new syringes by now as well.
Yes, they do, but yeah, they ran into some issues with getting proper syringes and actually getting the product. So we were using Melrem's system, and they had no vials.
But
So-
Boundtree has it all
Boundtree
available,
does.
it's still at a cheaper price than the EpiPen.
Correct, but we are no longer going through Melrem's. They're not doing it
Right.
anymore. So
Additionally, we have the town of Winter is updating their PAD program. Dr. Montesano has signed on to oversee that program. So this is, it sounds like they had an original PAD, so they're updating the medical director and also a contact person for the one, so we have to go back. And Bright Computers out on Main Street in Fishers is applying for a CAD program as well. And let's see who they're listing. Dr. Gary Elhart is going to be doing.
Any other new business?
I have a couple of agencies that have contacted me, or churches, I should say, churches and golf courses that are looking for medical directors for their PAD program. So, I guess.
Give out anyone's name, sir?
I didn't give anyone's name out yet. I guess what I'll do is just put it out as an email to REMAC in case anybody's interested.
It's kind of, I've always thought it was kind of nice to kind of keep one of the local docs in the loop. But if no one else steps up, I'm sure myself,
To be honest
Scott or
with you, it'd
Matt.
be nice to have the ERs that are going to be looking after the patients that deal with.
Well, that's kind of
that
right, yeah.
it seemed that this hospital's in pretty much every county.
So that, yeah, I mean, if it's something, like if it's Newark Country
Good
Club,
community thing for the
Newark
hospitals to
picked
do.
it up, know, so let's put it out to the REMAC, and we'll get, I'm sure there's enough people around we can do it. It's,
Well, one of them I know is in Seneca Falls right now.
I was gonna say, knowing the specific locations would be helpful as well, because yeah, I mean, places in and around Clifton Springs, I mean, certainly,
it's
no
not a
problem.
real hard job.
Okay. Then the other is conference 2020. Sorry. Just to let everyone know that it does not correspond with the same weekend that the schools are on vacation. So I will expect many of the physicians to be available this time.
Just to kind of dovetail on it, instead of doing the Friday, Saturday dates that we've done in the past, we're going to switch it off and try to do it on Saturday, Sunday to see if that boosts the attendance at all. It is going to be
29th of February and the 1st of March.
we have a number of topics already, but if somebody's got a specific topic, or for your medical folks, if you guys have a lecture that the topic, I'll send you those information. We're always looking for new ideas.
But several, when we did the evaluations, and that several people noted on their eval that they wished we could have done Saturday, Sunday rather than Friday, Saturday, so that they didn't have to take off from work or so very much right.
Definitely try and location will be the same at the college.
Still at Hobart Middle School.
All right. Anyone else have anything they'd like to bring
I'd
forward?
like to, everyone is somewhere where we have an RFP right now for our transport services, which is an ongoing process. It's centralized with our RH, and our purchasing department is working on that. But I did want to announce that AMR did put in their 90-day notice and will no longer be taking transports for us. So that will have an effect on our county and some of our services. So obviously there's going to be some room for growth, as AMR will probably no longer be around Newark.
Jamie, you want to invest with me in anything?
No, I mean, certainly from the Wayne County response patterns, that's going to significantly impact the response in and around the town of Arcadia and the village of Newark,
And Lyons.
and Lyons as well, in part because AMR was starting to feed pretty significantly into the 911 system, particularly on the overnights when some of those agencies are no longer staffing vehicles. So certainly from the Wayne County aspect of it, it is a significant concern. It is a significant call volume. In the flip side, within Wayne County, and in part as a response to this and other factors in the county has now transitioned. Wayne County ALS provides ALS services all over the county for any of the towns that request them at any time. Traditionally, we were a 6 a.m. till 10 p.m. agency. We transitioned earlier this year, or last year, to a 24-hour service with one car. We then increased it to 2 cars, and we will, I think it actually just started at the beginning of this month. We have 2 full-time cars and a backup 3rd car on the overnight. So the agency is now responding to a large volume of ALS calls, particularly in the out-of-hours. We're over 3,000 calls a year. So I think in 4 years, I think we've gone from 2,000 to 2,000. So that,
And there's sick patients too.
Yeah.
well, there's sick patients and long transport times. So that, I think, is an interesting development. We've got notice from other agencies that they are going to be tailing back their ALS coverage and relying on the county more. So, I had a couple of things for new business. I was going to ask maybe, since we've now had the fight with Ivy Gutoralak and standing orders and everything, The cost of IV Tylenol has now dropped down to very reasonable. It's down at about $15 a dose now, which is about what EMS is paying for Ketorolac. IV Tylenol is now the most common given painkiller worldwide in EMS. It's utilized by the Australians and also by the Brits. It has minimal, has a better side effect profile than Ketorolac. And I just want to put the plug out there for it, and I'd maybe even consider asking you to take it to the state. Everyone always says it's 3,000 times more expensive than PO Tylenol, although we're not allowed to give PO Tylenol either, which
Well, the new collaborative protocols introduced PO Tylenol
Right.
and Motrin.
I think it starts in November or something.
Actually, August 1st.
August 1st. So the rub is the reason that that term comes out that it's 3,000 times more expensive than the pill is because the pills are so cheap, not because the IV preparation is so expensive. And if you've got a trauma patient that for some reason you don't want to use a narcotic, an IV Tylenol is very appropriate. If you've got a puking child with high fever, there's lots of indications that could be a possibility. And I think that it provides an alternative when we use up all the Ketorolac in the world. Once we start giving it on standing order, which is what happens with every other medication, there ends up being a shortage. So I know we championed Ketorolac, so I'm maybe asking you to champion IV Tylenol as well.
It's interesting because I do support that. I've tried to get it a couple of times, and here I've had good success with it at other systems. One of the things I've come up against is that there's no research that supports it's any better, even though we know it has the first pass, it avoids the first pass mechanism, and that's why it's deemed to be more effective, but this research doesn't support that it's any better than taking oral or, combining, Ketorolac. So I'm curious, if you've seen anything in the EMS research that
And certainly
has
the
been
British
supporting the
research.
effectiveness of it.
I recently watched a series done by the BBC about British paramedics, and it would seem that both the Australians and the Brits are moving to a non-narcotic EMS service. And they're using gas and air. They're using gas and air, nitrous oxide.
gas.
So gas and air on a demand valve. They're using IV Tylenol as their two main modalities for analgesia. So I was just struck by the show that every presentation they were coming in, they gave a gram of Tylenol and and 2 of morphine or something like that.
Were they using that preferentially over Ketorolac?
Yes, it was their primary analgesic. So I think it's worthwhile considering and exploring. I know that as a region, we've always championed expanding the drug box in an economic way. I think it would be worthwhile considering it.
So I agree. I think having as many tools in the toolbox that are reasonable tools, this is a reasonable tool. I'm going to talk to the folks at Collaborative because we approved Tylenol. Tylenol is an approved drug for use through the Collaborative protocols orally, but we've approved acetaminophen, so this is just another form of acetaminophen. It may not be that far.
2 letters in the Collaboratives we have to change.
Yeah. The other thing is that we do have a state list of alternative drugs when drugs become short supply. And you're right, Ketorolac is going to go the same way Narcan will. It's going to be short supplied soon, and it would be nice to have an alternative.
Yeah.
So let me put the word out to those guys and see. It may be very simple for us to approve that regionally.
The other thing was a request. It might be nice in the REMAC meeting is quickly becoming an interface between hospitals and EMS services that maybe don't have a clear forum for discussion. It might be nice to have a kind of just a one-liner hospital report. The other agencies are giving reports from the individual hospitals, and I'll tell you why, and it's not a criticism, but I think I got a phone call from one of our stats guys to say that turnaround times at Newark had gone up recently, and we were trying to figure out what it was, and it was bedside registration that started, and I think you were just kind of knocking into the system of it. There's not really a super great forum to either be notified that you may be changing that system, and or the flip side, that we noticed the change, positive or negative, and how it impacted us. So I think, you know, we have consistent representation from the hospitals. I think it would be a nice kind of like a little section for reports, but obviously they're giving it, not me, so but it would be reasonable.
We've been doing bedside and trying to bring that in for several, a year and a half now. So I think the slowdown that they noticed had nothing to do with bedside registration. It had everything to do with being overwhelmed with patients. We've had a couple. Again, we've had very, very sick. We are finding in the hospitals, just to speak to this, is that our level 4s and 5s triage, which ESI, 4s and 5s have really gone down as urgent cares are more prevalent, as patients are wisely choosing the appropriate place to go. Our volumes have remained somewhat steady, and our sick patients, levels 1, 2s, and 3s are going up, or proportionately with losing our 4s and 5s. So sometimes we're finding that we have a lot of sick patients at once, and I think we've had a couple of issues over the last 4 months where we did have all beds filled with very sick patients and trouble getting patients into beds, which is a new situation for us, honestly.
There is a data lag, because I just got May's numbers, or April's numbers now.
Yeah, this was March and April, the beginning of April.
I mean, I think the idea is a very reasonable one, because recently there's been some impactful changes with psychiatric care within the region. Geneva and Soldiers and Sailors essentially closing up their psychiatric shop, which has increased the amount of transports coming from those two locations to Clifton Springs, which is the CPEP in the area, and therefore transfers going out of Clifton Springs. So, I mean, your point's very well taken. I certainly would support and be more than happy to give a report on any changes, related to the hospital.
Well, and it also allows the hospitals to meet their 405 requirement in Section 10 or Part 10 of the Health Code, that you have to have some interface of communication. So I think this is a good idea.
I mean, we've tended, because just
part of that is us paying here, right?
Well, and for us, I mean, our contact is 95% with Finger Lakes Ambulance.
Right.
We sit down with these. We sit down with each other once every month or two just to kind of touch base. But I certainly would be more than happy to give a report here, and would support that from others as well. I think that it would be beneficial.
I think it's pretty easy to add to the agenda. If you guys have some report, great. If not,
well, at the moment, that'd be my report. Would be the changes with psychiatric care and the increasing change of volume and transfers related.
And then the final thing is just with the MD credentialing, it should be expanded to the medical directors of the agencies that are not necessarily working out of the hospitals, because the medical directors have the ability to give medical control and medical command to their individual agencies, so they should be included within that
Agreed.
Credentialing process as well. At least be given the option. We don't want to be seen to exclude them because they don't work in a local hospital. And some agencies use family practice. It would seem like a reasonable thing to get out to the agencies. Please make sure your medical director is also credentialed.
yeah, I agree. We don't have too many.
We don't have many, but we want.
But probably a reasonable request.
Yeah.
Less, like maybe 2, but they should be included. I agree.
I'm one. I don't work at a Wayne County hospital.
We still consider you to be part of the family, don't you worry?
I'd like to credential.
I had a question too. Does anybody have a Woodstock update? what you've heard, I'm really concerned
Maybe
about
so,
the
probably,
off and on, off and
kind of.
on.
So they
off and
won
on.
the court battle against their financial backer,
Right,
which was supposed to put more money into the event.
right.
Part of the problem, and then they said they were going to reduce the numbers, they were going to cut off sales at 75,000 and allow maybe up to 10,000 more. Now, the problem is, one of the many problems is that the local zoning committee did not allow any properties off Watkins Glen to get zoned for camping. So if they can't keep it all within the Watkins Glen Raceway property, right now no one has a place to legally stay. So that's where it stands. Ticket sales were supposed to start up at a reduced price of $400 for the 3 days. And they were also going to now offer one-day tickets, where originally it was going to be only a 3-day packet, and you could come onto property. If you left property, you were not allowed back on to try and improve security. So it's really kind of a mess.
How's the medical side of it going?
So the
Should we
prepare
prepare
side
the best we
was
can?
going to be provided by a group called Paradox out of New York City, which seems to be kind of an interesting company. They were going to hire as many local people, physicians, nurses, paramedics as possible to supplement their small group. But when they approached the state, and I wish Ross was here because I think Ross could probably give a better report, although you, Aaron, I know you were in some meetings, their initial plans were way understaffed. No air medical, limited transportation. They were going to use the garages at Watkins Glen as a temporary hospital, trying to treat as many on site as possible. And having worked up there for years, and fortunately survived a couple of Fish concerts. To tell you what they had planned for was numbers enough. So we currently don't know for sure what's going to happen. Ticket sales have not started up again. Yeah, we're running out of time.
So according to Brian Greenberg, the director of the Bureau now, they have not gotten Department of Health permits yet. And if they do, they're expecting that the Bureau may declare activate the statewide emergency medical service plan, which will free up mutual aid abilities. That was their thought right now. I think that group, Paradox, was only considering 6 or 8 ambulances.
It was kind of a joke.
So, they're really underperforming their whole setup.
So here's the additional concern and some things that I've kind of noticed here over the last several months. We're seeing less narcotic overdoses with all the great work that everyone is doing in reducing prescribing, and the pills are decreasing a little bit, et cetera, et cetera. We're seeing more synthetics.
Yeah.
And honestly, these people coming in are crazy. The fact that we're having to intubate some people because nothing works on them, including ketamine and giving them the toolbox, and the only thing we have is general anesthesia, basically. So
You say that because Ontario Commissioners just published be on the lookout for it. They're starting to see the sweet tarts, little Valentine hearts type fentanyl taking the streets of the county.
okay, I haven't seen that. I'm just seeing more synthetics and somewhat concerned with our increasing population and everyone else that's coming in. So.
And it's important to note that there's a response nationally. ASAP recently came out now recommending, instead of the standard 5 and 2 of Haldol and Ativan for sedation, they're recommending 10 and 4 as standing first medication. So they're doubled up. The theory being that they want to protect the safety of the ER workers. When we actually look at sedation orders being given over medical control, they're significantly less than what is being utilized in the hospitals. So from the other side of the guys calling in, they're getting orders for 2 of Versed and giving it and using a lot of butane as well to get these guys to the hospital. And then they're turning up at hospital, getting 10 of Haldol, 5 of Ativan, or 4 of Ativan, and 400 of ketamine before they're even on a monitor. So again, it's kind of maybe an appeal to the medical control facilities. Please sedate these patients because we can manage the airway, but we can't manage the violence.
Well, but this has been an ongoing problem in this region where med controls at the hospitals do not give appropriate orders a lot of times.
Well, this is a change, and I think we're seeing, an uptick too, and I think it's important to talk about this. Yeah, and this is
Admittedly, the guys and gals who are shy about medicating over the phone are also shy about medicating within the department.
Yeah.
Oh,
So it's just, it's a lot
Well,
of
the
times
other-
a practice habit.
The
so
other
to
thing
speak.
that's kind of interesting is that if you look at what the paramedics, if you give the option for the paramedics to request a drug dose, they will typically underdose themselves because they don't want to ask for too much in the first place.
Understood.
Which is why I asked them to request weight-based dosing for sedation now because it forces them to ask for more. Because they call up and they don't really want to ask for 10 and 4 or 400 of ketamine, so they rationalize, this guy will probably give me 2 of Versed and 100 of ketamine, so that's what I'm going to ask for to get that. So it's an interesting dynamic, but
Agreed.
I think that we're getting to the point now that we know that road transport accidents still represent the biggest threat to EMS providers, but the second biggest threat now is direct violence towards them.
And back to Woodstock, because
They did get their funding though, or there was
Oppenheimer.
2 days ago they got approved
they
for
haven't
funding,
moved
but
ahead.
no one knows how much it's for.
EMS that primarily covers Watkins Glen comes out of Southern Tier, and Southern Tier does not allow them to use any opiates or ketamine. So we typically don't have a lot of medications up there. And if anyone's interested, yet another sign that maybe Woodstock is not going to occur. Miley Cyrus does not have those dates on her website. So,
She left them off.
if it's
Sorry,
on the
man.
internet,
I'm terribly sorry to hear it for you.
if it's on the internet or it's on the internet, you gotta trust it.
So one of the interesting things about that, all the bands have been paid.
Yes,
Yeah, they don't care.
I think the total I heard was like $30
$30
million.
million has already been
Oh,
spent.
my.
So
Yeah,
if
bands-
they don't
bands
find a
will
way
be
of
paid.
running that, they're losing a lot of money.
So they can't play anywhere else those days.
Right,
Right.
that's the those dates, and they may play in the area still, but maybe not there.
Might be some opportunities for fundraisers.
Seriously?
They're already booked for those dates, you know.
REMAC have
Drive these people around.
All right, guys, this has been a great meeting. And, oh, yeah, absolutely.
One quick thing, just to follow back on the Tylenol. Strong is currently enrolling for a study. I just found out on a double-blinded placebo, IV versus PO Tylenol.
Oh, no.
In nephrectomy patients, but still. I knew they were working on something, but I just got confirmation they're enrolling in it. So we should have
Need
something.
more data. Yeah, that's great.
At least
It's going to be a
that's-
limited number, though.
It will be, but
Very.
it's something. There's nothing right now.
Because they know there's not good data.
No, there's not. And our Dr. Galt said we told him about it. So it was been pushing it.
I will reach out to the collaborative folks and see if we can bring it into the region. Maybe we'll start collecting some of our own data. Anything else, folks? I would love a motion to talk about not having a July meeting. We rarely have a July meeting.
We don't need to talk about it. I'll make a motion not to have the July.
Second? All right, anyone opposed? In that case, we will not meet again until September.
See you in the fall.
There may be some emails.
Check your calendar. Is that going to, what's REMAC meeting coincide with?
We may have to. Well, I don't know if I even have the stage. When is the stage?
Because last year we did end up having a July meeting.
There was something that came up.